Okay.
On that note, I guess we can probably just start with Mark
Okay.
in Detroit. How you doing? Thanks for waiting.
Hello, yes. I don't think I've ever actually talked to you two on the show, but I have called in the past.
Cool.
So my question is basically how bad is bad arguments to the movement? How much of our credibility does it take away when we make bad arguments?
A lot. I actually gave a talk in Kentucky and in Vancouver, in Vancouver, called "Hyperbole Will Destroy the World," and I chose that title mostly out of amusement, but it was about, I hate bad arguments no matter who's making them, but I especially hate them when they come from people who are ostensibly on my side of an issue, because if you make a bad argument, especially if you're in a position like ours, where people are going to listen and perhaps think, oh, that's a good idea, without doing more research on their own, which I thoroughly discourage. Don't take anything we say at face value.
Right.
Go out and research and think about it. But there are people who will. And then when they run up against somebody who knows what they're talking about, now the foundation behind what they believe is crumbling because somebody has pointed out how it's a bad argument. And the view of atheists and secularists in general from the person who destroyed that horrible argument is emboldened, because they already thought that we didn't have any good reasons to hold the positions we hold. So when you offer bad reasons and they easily knock them down, this makes them think that they're even more right.
Yeah. One of the arguments that bugs me the most, you've probably heard this one before, and I hear this one all the time, and it has to do with gay marriage, is they go to the Leviticus one, and then they say, oh, and you also can't use fabrics of two kind, or you can't eat shellfish. And I'm like, most Christians do not hold to that. You're arguing against a straw man.
No, you're not. No, you're not. So if the Bible actually literally says something, you're not saying that every Christian or every believer holds to that. What you're doing is exposing that they don't, in fact, hold to that they are now picking and choosing from the Bible. And the point of doing that is to say, what is your reason for accepting this verse and rejecting this verse? Because I want to, they have to have some, now if they have a good reason to do that, then fine. It's no longer an objection. The problem is they don't seem to have a good reason for doing this.
The reason I've usually heard, and the reason why I don't usually do that argument, because I think it is they interpret Jesus came to abolish the laws, and yes, I disagree with them on that, but I don't want to argue technicalities.
Well, that's the whole thing you're arguing. Because if Jesus said, I came not to change the law but to fulfill it, and then not a jot or a tittle will change until all these things go away, then he's advocating for the law. Now, you can make arguments that he wasn't advocating for all of it. They will draw lines between ceremonial laws and sacrificial laws and things like that. But they have to actually come up with a justification for it that's not just a post hoc rationalization. Yep. So if you don't feel like actually discussing the theology, by all means, you don't have to go anywhere near what the Bible says about anything. But that doesn't mean that citing what the Bible actually says is in fact a bad argument or a straw man.
I try to stick more to things like Noah's Ark, things that I can actually show. And obviously, if you don't believe in that, I'm not going to use that argument against you.
That strikes me as odd, because when the Bible says, not to wear mixed fabrics and eat shellfish, it's very, very clear and very literal, and there's almost no argument that this is metaphorical. And yet there are huge swaths of people who are Christians who don't look at the Noah story as anything other than metaphor. They don't believe that there was a global flood. They may believe there was a local flood. They may believe it was just a metaphoric story. And so to opt out of the shellfish and into the Noah story seems to be kind of weaker footing, unless you know that that's what somebody believes. Because if you talk about how absurd the Noah story is, which I'm in favor of, if their response is, yeah, but I don't think that was actually literal, and I don't even think the Bible intends it to be viewed as literal. Well, okay, Now,
most of the people I debate with are really are fundamentalist, and they actually try to explain. Yes, the Noah's Ark story happened. Jesus literally God literally created the earth in 6 days. Like, they actually are that much.
yep.
And so that's why I tend to do that. Obviously, learning from you guys, I have learned to adapt my arguments to who I'm talking to figure out what they actually believe, and to construct an argument against that, than to argue against to get into a middle of an argument and then go, oh wait, you don't even believe that. For instance, my dad does not believe. My dad believes hell is the grave. So if I was to have a conversation with my dad, I couldn't say, hey, God's this horrible person because he sends good people to burn for all eternity, because my dad doesn't believe that.
Well, yeah, in that case, you flip it, and you, instead of saying that if they believe in like annihilation theory, that the non-believers or whoever is undeserving or unchosen just ceases to exist, then you still point out that he's playing favorites, that he's picking and choosing who's going to get to live forever in bliss and who's not.
No, absolutely, but I try to tailor. I try to tailor my arguments to who I'm speaking to, and I've learned that from I've learned that from watching shows like yours, and getting better at debating by watching, and learning that not everybody has the same arguments, and not every argument's going to work on the same people. So be willing to adapt your arguments for the person you're talking to.
I absolutely agree. And on that note, we've got full lines, so I'm going to move on to another caller. But thanks a lot, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and have a great day.
All right.
Thanks.